Kyone, I just want to say how much I've enjoyed working with you.
Aw, thanks, Katie. You've been a really great intern.
I like you so much, and I just want you to know I really hope you can get out of this stifling office environment someday.
Oh, no, actually, I really like it here at the office.
So slow, so plodding. You must feel like an animal chained to your workstation.
No, you're not getting it. I look forward to coming here every day. It's stimulating, you know?
Kyone, I've got the door closed. You don't have to pretend.
People from your generation, they don't understand the joys of a workplace that you really like.
Kyone, you are so smart. They've probably bugged this room, right? Everything we say is probably being written down by the Director of Human Capital Organization Management. Look, they've caught us already. Let's smash this window and get out, and we'll be free. Free like alpine mountain goats running across the hillside.
Oh, okay. You go first. All right, I'll be right behind you.
Here I go.
Hey, Human Capital Organization Management? Yeah, this is Kyone. We've got a runner. She's headed west on asylum. Set tasers on high. Repeat, set tasers on high. I love my job. Today, the Nose discusses an essay praising office culture, but first, does the Charlie Hebdo story teach any lessons on the limits of satire? And now he has an erotic relationship with his TPS reports. Colin McEnroe.
I love it here at the office. I love my TPS reports. I like working on my TPS reports. It thrills me. No, actually, we are in the second half of the Nose today going to talk about an essay from New York Magazine in praise of the office. And it's kind of a suggestion that as office life dwindles away, as in fact a generation of workers is less and less likely to have access, even if they want it, to the kind of job where you go to the office every day. Something, or maybe a lot of things, may be lost. And then specifically, the office, often depicted as kind of a stifling antithesis of creativity, may be where a lot of creativity happens. So, either in praise of the office or not. That'll be the second part of our show today. First of all, let me tell you who's on before I tell you what the first part is. We have author and critic and bon vivant Rand Cooper from the Mark Twain House. We have master of all things Twain-esque and funny and fun, Jacques Lamar. And from Trinity College, we have Professor Irene Papoulis. And we're going to begin the show. I mean, we sort of can't not talk about this. Ordinarily with the Nose, I kind of like to see if we can not repeat things that are already being talked about on other shows. But in some ways, what's unfolded on the streets of Paris, and which was still going on minutes before we went on the air today, it's kind of hard to avoid. And there's a part of it, I think, that we can break off here very profitably, especially given who's on the show today. And that is the kind of the question. Does satire, I see if I can even phrase it, is satire deserving of just limitless freedom? I mean, is that always a great thing? Or does satire in some ways, in some instances, and could this maybe have been one of those cases, pour oil on a fire that's already a fairly dangerous fire? Jonathan Chait earlier this week, writing a much-quoted essay in New York Magazine, said the right to blaspheme religion is one of the most elemental exercises of political liberalism. One cannot defend the right without defending the practice. Not everybody has felt that way, though, over the course of the week. And as we were talking and getting ready for the show, we started to circulate some articles where there were some real questions about, not about the right to do this, but the advisability, I guess, of doing this and whether or not we all need to feel as though we are Charlie. So, Irene Papoulis, I'm going to kind of let you get us started down one path or another. I know that you've been sort of sorting through these questions in your mind. One of the things we did is also look at some of the things that Charlie Hebdo actually publishes. And not only are there very raw depictions of Islam and the Prophet Muhammad, but there have been very crude depictions of other kinds of minorities, sometimes maybe with a desire to make a point about how minorities are unfairly perceived, but still this sorts itself out with these very, very crude cartoons of the Boko Haram young women as pregnant welfare mothers, or a black minister in the French government as a monkey. I don't know. None of that made me want to go and stand in a square in Paris and hold my pen up and my Je suis Charlie sign. But I'm even struggling with why that might be.
Yeah. Well, I think. I first did have that the reaction that I wanted to go stand in a chair in a square in Paris with my I Am Charlie shirt on. But then, because I think it's hard not to have that reaction when you see the faces of the people that were killed and they just look, like us. And there's people that, they were expressing. They were doing cartoons, and so I want to feel in solidarity with them. But then when I started to see the cartoons and read the articles about the racism in the cartoons and all that, I got less comfortable with that perspective and started to think, all right, where's the line? There's certain lines. There's just a million. I think we each have our own line about what we tolerate and what we don't. And so it's really hard to sort it out as a culture, among people within a culture, et cetera. So I'm still, not exactly sure where I draw the line. I mean, I believe in freedom of speech, but at the same time, there's limits. But where's my limit, and is it fair for me to impose a limit?
And this is something we've talked about in other contexts in the past, that the idea that that there ought to be an opportunity to make fun of anything, and that, in fact, there's something healthy about the ability to make fun of almost anything, and that people who believe in this and practice it and make it their profession, whether they're stand-up comedians in America or satirists in Paris, I mean, they really are hewing towards a set of principles, saying, I have to be able to do this. You may not find it funny, you may not find it helpful, but that doesn't make any difference. I have to assert this aspect of myself, and this is my art. And I don't know, I would have agreed with that until maybe Wednesday, and I'm really struggling right now. I'm wondering whether you are too.
I think part of the confusion has to do with what is one's sense of the target. The means of satire necessarily involve distressing someone, perturbing someone. It goes about its mission of upsetting people in order to complain about something. Now, we live in a society that, arguably anyway, and certainly in comparison with much more theocracy-based societies, we don't hold a lot sacred. But one thing we do hold sacred is our right to speak freely. There's also, I think it's fair to say, a tradition of sort of impudent American humor that, for instance, like in World War II, you remember first the song, a Spike Jones song, and then later the movie Der Führer's Face. When the Führer says he is the master race, we hire right in the Führer's face. And there was a way in which a kind of characteristic, freewheeling American sarcastic impudence weighed in against the humorless solemnity of fascism. And that stands, in retrospect, as one of those examples in which satire, its particular aims and targets and its means were clear and brilliant. And there aren't many Americans who would say otherwise. The situation we find ourselves in right now is so much more complicated in at least two ways. One, what is this Islam? Who are really the targets of this kind of thrust and parry? Bill Maher, you passed along that interview with Bill Maher, in which he just goes off foaming at the mouth about how Muslims everywhere are supporting beheadings and terror. Well, that's a very gross generalization. So is this magazine attacking just Muslim terrorists? Is it saying that this is a terrorist religion? We're insecure about what the target of satire is, and that makes us uncertain about the whole enterprise, in addition to the dangers that it poses. But that's another question.
Well, the dangers that it poses, Jacques, this is sort of something that you brought up too, that, the interview is not a precisely analogous situation, and I also brought up Gandhi bought beer, which we can also talk about. But there's a sense that if you're going to poke your stick into a viper's nest, you better have a very good reason for it.
Yeah.
If you're going to do things that are going to bring violence to the streets of Paris or create a standoff between North Korea and the U.S., I don't know. I think that we have kind of a sense, well, then don't be juvenile about it. Be smart about it and understand what you're doing.
Well, I think when you look at the interview, there's something oddly, good-natured about it in terms of, it's really there to make you laugh. Whereas you look at the Charlie Hebdo cartoons, and it's a weird line between humor and hate speech. And there are certain forms of speech that are protected, and there are other things that cause instigate things, and so I'm with everyone on this, and terms of, abhorring the violence that resulted from it, but not being surprised at the result of it. No one should have been surprised that North Korea was going to respond the way that it did.
What were you going to say?
Yeah, I was going to say, so I guess it's there to make us laugh, the interview, but it's not there to make the North Koreans laugh. And you can make one person laugh and offend somebody intensely, but I think that's your point too,
yeah,
right?
I mean, and there's stuff that I've written in my plays and whatnot that I know would be deeply offensive to people of certain faiths, hopefully not people of certain races, but I look at Charlie Hebdo, and obviously it's a different situation. It's not an entertainment per se.
By the way, as we go along here, I want to hear what you have to say, but just quickly, I'll throw out the phone number if somebody wants to chime in. It's 860-275-7266. 860-275-7266. Do you believe in kind of an unfettered power for satire? And did this incident change your belief at all? What were you going to say?
I'll say two things. First of all, Nicholson Baker, the novelist, published a slim novel. I haven't read it, but I recall it from the Bush years, in which President George Bush is assassinated. And I believe this was published while George Bush was president. The fact that no one here can really entirely recall that, well, you probably can, Colin, but it made, it angered some people. Oh, you can't write a novel in which our sitting president is assassinated. Well, you can. He can, and he did. Now, he had his own satirical purposes, his own entertainment purposes, but we are such a no-holds-barred culture that we can and do allow artists to produce, to actually enact fantasy killings of our sitting president. And then the lesson we take from that is, in effect, wow, yes, we have the society that can stand that is, broad enough and liberal enough to allow that. Now, other societies, particularly those that are based in a theological culture of the sacred, so much so that their own theology disallows any representation of the prophet, even a flattering one. They're living on such a different wavelength, and there's an inevitable cultural clash, which we see when people from those cultures emigrate to Europe in particular, and that's where this clash has been flaring for a decade now. And we see it in events like this, and the only easy answer for us is, well, we're not going to proscribe this speech, and we're not talking about that. And I think we can all agree, and probably some of the pieces that we read, that when even tasteless, even offensive and inappropriate stuff elicits violence, then we inevitably and appropriately sort of rally round. And I think there's some of that going on. It's like, oh, I may not actually have liked that, and I wouldn't have done it, and I wouldn't advise it, and I find it tasteless, and I find it offensive. But you know what? You can't go killing people because of that, and I will go out there with my pen, even though I found it tasteless and offensive, precisely because people are killing people for doing this.
Though I think it's hard to say that they killed them because that was the reason. I think Ezra Klein wrote a piece, and one of the things we read that said, he said it's not a one-to-one correlation. That if that magazine hadn't been there, those killers would have killed at some other target. You can't just say that there's if you do that cartoon, someone's necessarily going to kill you.
Well,
for that.
I don't know about that. These people have been specifically threatened in the past and bombed, and they were firebombed once in a specific retaliation that was pegged explicitly to a cover that they ran.
So the guest edited by Muhammad issue,
right?
Yeah.
The guest. So while I think it's safe to say that in the attack on Benghazi may well not have been motivated by that guy's film. In this case, it seems like it's a pretty direct link.
I want to ask you one other thing, though. You sort of talked about a different kind of society, a theocratic kind of society. But European societies, and you know more about them than the rest of us, you've lived in them more than the rest of us, are different too. I mean, they proscribe certain kinds of speech. We did a whole show with you about Germany, but it's even true in France. There are certain things you can't. I think it is illegal to deny the Holocaust in France. I mean, there are. European societies are more comfortable, right? Saying no,
absolutely,
you can't say that.
And that's a great topic, and I'd love to hear a show that you would do, and having the requisite people in who spent their careers researching this. But what the differential outcomes are in societies that do ban in even liberal, European societies that do ban certain forms of speech versus the outcomes in this country. It's a great topic. Germany has proceeded ever since World War II on the notion that certain expressions are inherently toxic, and we're simply going to make them illegal. So they actually imprisoned the right-wing British historian David Irving for publishing Holocaust denial-related articles in Germany. He spent 2 years in prison over there. So they routinely criminalize not just people who are out there rallying, saying hateful things on the street, but actually people who write articles that express certain forbidden ideas. So then the question becomes, if you grant that that's a sort of toxic point of view, is it better to, in effect, let it swirl and circulate in the hopes that it will dissipate off, or is it better to actually proscribe it? And that's just a great question. Arguably, if you don't allow it to be expressed, it sort of stays there beneath the surface and swirls around subterraneanly.
It's so hard as Americans, I think it's so hard for us to really imagine accepting a culture that represses certain things. I mean, I can sort of intellectually imagine it and see that it would make sense, but my American spirit says, no, we all have to be able to say whatever we want. That's really important. Even though I know that's not true, I think it's interesting to think about our Americanness.
Well, Jacques, you sit at the flashpoint of some of this a lot of the time. I mean, for example, first of all, we can talk about your own work, which, as you say, can be somewhat inflammatory.
Yeah.
I mean, not for nothing did you do a play called Jacques Lamar Has Gone Too Far, or a series of plays. But Twain sits there too, right? I mean, there's all kinds of questions that speak right to what Irene's saying about, Twain's use of certain words, Twain's use of certain kinds of provocative imagery. And, I mean, one of the things that satirists say is, I can't think about who I'm offending. If you do that, if you even let your mind go there, the battle is lost. I mean, if Matt Groening famously, I'm sure I've used this example 25 times, but Matt Groening in his comic strip Life is Hell, Life in Hell, Life is Hell,
Life in Hell,
Life in Hell. So he's got these two characters, Jeff and Akbar, and people would say, well, what are they? Are they Muslims? Are they gay? Are they dwarves? And he would say, whichever possibility offends you the most. That was sort of his answer. But that's the satirist answer a lot of the time, right? I can't think about who is going to be deeply wounded or hurt by this or even offended to the point of outrage. If I do, I've lost the battle.
And then what are you doing? Then why are you doing it?
I was watching that interview with Bill Maher, and there's part of me that loves his fearlessness the way I love Mark Twain's fearlessness in speaking about things that, that would get his dander up. And so there's that part of me that, like Rand said, wants to be out there, like when you look at the Salman Rushdie situation and there's a fatwa on his head for writing the satanic verses, and you're like, I absolutely support Salman Rushdie's right to do that. And then there's situations like The Interview or Charlie Hebdo where all of a sudden you get this nervousness of, I support their right to do it, however. And so, like, right now I've been contemplating doing this play that I would like to write. I don't really want to talk about what the specifics are, but I know that there is a certain danger in writing it. And that's a personal choice on my part, and there's part of me that feels like I kind of need to get past the fear to say, this is what I want to say.
Could you say what kind of danger?
The people who spoke out about this have been targeted. So I'll tell you on the break.
All right. Well, I think one reason, Jacques, that we instinctively support Salman Rushdie is that he's written a novel, a work of art, took years to write, and is not something whose content and satirical aims are going to be bewildering to you or me. Bill Maher said, and this I think is like a pivot point for this discussion. He said, we should be able to insult whatever we want. That's what free speech is. Well, that sets a pretty low bar for what satire is. Satire is not just randomly insulting someone. One argument for thinking about who you're hurting, is that, well, you're out there actually in a way to hurt something. You're out there to hurt a point of view or set of values that you consider errant and dangerous. That's where you're trying to score. Now, one of those articles that Colin sent around, it included this guy Canfield's analysis of an American comic named Ryan. I wasn't familiar with him. Maybe you guys are. Johnny Ryan. And he showed a couple of his cartoons. Did you guys see the one of the World Trade Center?
Mm-hmm.
And it was this obscene image of a plane hitting the side of the World Trade Center that he had turned into a sexual act. He called it 6911, Never Forget. And you look at this, and it's interesting because probably he has shrewdly chosen the closest thing that Americans do construe as sacred, and that is the memory of our collective hurt on that occasion. And he's just decided, you know what, I'm going to make people really pissed off. If you try to read, in effect, the symbolism of this, you have no idea what he's possibly trying to say with this, other than like, oh, you consider this holy ground, and you know what, I'm going to come and just slime all over it. And that's not satire. That's just a wanton, random, stupid insult.
But you can look at something like, the South Park guys routinely, whether or not it's Book of Mormon or what was the one with the puppets?
Team America?
Team America with Kim Jong-il, and South Park, Bigger, Longer, and Uncut with Saddam Hussein as Satan's gay lover. These are all things that they take on, and it's like the entire Mormon faith, for example, or the nation of Iraq or the nation of North Korea. You can say, well, they're juvenile, but they're art, in their way. Whether or not you agree that cartoon, the 6911 cartoon, is art, or the Charlie Hebdo cartoons are art on the same level with Salman Rushdie's novels, is us applying a subjective.
Well, hold on.
standard.
I have no problem saying that this is not art. And I would argue. I'd be happy to spend the rest of the show arguing about that. But what my point is, even as satire, this makes no sense.
Well, right. So
because you didn't get their point,
right? Do you?
Yeah.
Whether or not I get it's not. Is not important.
Well, somebody should be able to get it.
No, because I may not be the intended audience for
that. So when we keep saying this, we're still talking about this cartoon. I hesitate to describe the cartoon, but as Rand says, it sort of juxtaposes the World Trade Center and a plane, one of the planes that might have hit the World Trade Center in more of a sexual pose. And from the title that he quoted to you can probably kind of generally imagine what it is we're talking about. Okay, what were you going to say?
I was going to go back to one of the initial points that Rand made about the satire in German, that it was clear and brilliant, and so I just feel like for me I think it's important that the person really knows what they're satirizing. Maybe they're not thinking about their feelings, but that was why I felt with the interview, it seemed sort of gratuitous. It seemed like, what do these people really know about North Korea? I would imagine they don't know that much, and so their satire was just kind of silly unnecessarily, so in an unnecessary way. But if it's something, and in a way that's what Rand's saying about this cartoon, you don't know why they were doing it. It seems like, at least for my standard, if the more you have a sense of why you're satirizing something and what exactly it is that you're satirizing, without just kind of having it be based on something you happen to hear about it one day, or a stereotype, extreme stereotypes that we have about North Korea that aren't based on any knowledge of what's actually going on. I want to have some kind of understanding or depth to the insight.
Good satire inescapably offends, but the mere fact of someone being offended does not mean that it's good satire.
Good point. And another thing that's worth thinking about here, I think, I'm so glad you brought up the 9/11 thing, because it made me remember something, which is that, one of the positions that we take, and Rand alluded to this, is here in America, where, we have this kind of uproarious, unstiflable quality. We have protections, legally guaranteed protections, and we have a style, a particular style, whether it's the Spike Jonze thing or something else. But I do remember, and I think everybody remembers, after 9/11, there was an attitude that went on, persisted for, I think, weeks in America, that not only could there not be, obviously, any joking about 9/11, that there couldn't be any joking. Remember that? There was a whole question about when somebody could tell a joke. On the David Letterman show, on Saturday Night Live, wherever it was, there was a question about when could somebody tell a chicken joke, I mean, never mind a political joke or a satirical joke, that something so serious had happened that maybe there could never be any joking anymore, and it might take a while. And I think Graydon Carter was the one who said, no, it's the end of irony. There can't be irony anymore. And so apparently in America, there are moments that are so somber and serious that collectively we decide that our senses of everybody's senses of humor and satire and parody have to be suspended because we're so important. But we don't like it too much when other people have that attitude. Then they seem very narrow-minded.
Right. I'm just thinking of how many feminists does it take to screw in a light bulb? That's not funny. Yeah. And so, we criticize at the
just
same
really
time.
It wasn't Rand. He's too good for that.
But so we criticize. It's like you can't win.
Maybe we should talk about Gandhi Bot.
We should. Yeah. Okay, so there's an IPA, a craft beer. It's called Gandhi Bot. It's made here in Connecticut. On the label is Mahatma Gandhi, more or less, cartoonized also as a robot, kind of randomly, I think. And it's apparently a very delicious beer. I haven't had it. But it really has attracted quite a bit of pushback particularly from the part of India that Gandhi is from. There have been petitions. There have been even members of the Gandhi family. Some apparently have signed off on it. Others have not. So I don't know, Rand, what is your take on that?
First of all, I would say that I don't have much of a personal take. I don't have a felt take, and one hesitates certainly to say anything by way of a pronouncement on what some other group is feeling. I mean, if someone's feeling really slighted by that, then certainly if I'm producing that beer, I'm going to think about that. Now, the way I'm certain that that label is not produced with any kind of malicious intent. It's like, all right, this is an IPA. It's an India Pale Ale. Well, India Pale Ale is a beer that was developed very hoppy, so that it was developed in the 19th century to export to Brits in India, and it was made so that it would actually improve over the long voyage. So you have a beer that was
How do you even know this?
Yeah, that's good knowledge.
I'm a bon vivant. You have a beer that is for India, and then you have we're just picking like the one Indian icon that American consumers will recognize, Gandhi, and then it's in a bottle. So it's like Gandhi in a bottle, a Gandhi bot. So that's all the thinking that went into it.
No, I think it's a Gandhi robot. I think that's the bot.
Right, I know, but I think the
play
is on the bottle. That's why it's a Gandhi bot. Otherwise, it's like, why is Gandhi a robot?
Good question.
And so, it's just like a bunch of loose wordplay, a funky image, and I mean,
But I have this sense, looking at that, I'm being told we've got to take a break here, but I have a sense that we think the world is our playland, that we can do anything, we can do this.
Because we wouldn't be offended.
Right, exactly. Right. And as the world gets smaller and more interconnected, I just think the world is less and less our playland. All right, we got to take a quick break. We'll be back after this. All right, we are back. We're going to grab a quick call here and then move on to the next topic. This is Paul in Plymouth, though. It's going to help us wrap up our satire conversation. Hi, Paul.
Yeah, I'd like to paint an illustration for you this afternoon regarding the Connecticut Supreme Court ruling in Re Cassandra.
Mm-hmm.
I would paint the illustration, and it would be a label for a new red wine, Robe Red Wine. And it would have the justices pictured on the label with police and DCF popping out of their sleeves. Target market would be judicial types, attorneys who work for the state. What would you think about that?
So you're saying this would be satire of their decision?
Yeah, it would have like under their robes and maybe popping out right below the belt level, like heads of police and
I would say
workers.
I would say keep your day job. Satire, so hard to do. So hard to do. All right. We have to move on here, and we are going to move on. We're going to move on to a conversation about offices. So New York Magazine, I don't know why it's all New York Magazine this week, but New York Magazine has this kind of fascinating article in praise of The Office. Sort of one part of it says, for decades now, The Office has suffered a lousy reputation. It's a cubicle Hades of demoralized proletarians. It's a glassed-in pasture of innocent cows that at any moment could get carted off to the abattoir. We saw this dim view played out over and over again in the pop culture of the last half of the 20th century, skipped down, and in fact it was so brilliantly parodied in The Office and movies like Office Space that in one study cited that millennials don't even want to go to work in offices because they think that's probably what it's like. It would just kill their souls, eviscerate their creativities. They don't want to do that. They don't want to be trapped in a cubicle. But this writer, Jennifer Senior, I think is her name, just talks about how much she, in fact, thinks offices are good. They are, in fact, a place where people go and become more creative, not less, where, in fact, there is more growth, not less. And she thinks that people, if millennials, whether they choose to or not, they may miss out on the office experience, and that may be very bad for them. So we all have different kind of relationships with the office. Jacques, you and I on this panel probably go to the closest thing to conventional offices, and they're certainly not really all that conventional.
Yeah, I was thinking about this and thinking, I enjoy working in an office. I mean, there's part of me that likes the time when I'm by myself and able to, quote unquote, get things done, but I love that communal feel of being with other people who are working towards the same goals. And I'm not sure you would get that if you're working, on your couch at home, kind of separate from your coworkers.
I'm going to put out the phone number right now because if you're going to call in about this, you've got to call in early. 860-275-7266. 860-275-7266. Rand, I mean, you've sort of chosen a life that steers you away from offices. Is that partly because you do see offices as places where creativity goes to die?
No, absolutely not. I desperately would love to have an office, and I have consciously been aware of missing out on the culture and the reality of offices. Reports show, I remember a study years ago that showed that a shockingly high proportion of Americans confess to preferring the workplace and the family at their workplace to their own actual family. And
I remember that article. It was like a dirty little secret.
Yeah, it was a dirty little people didn't want to admit, but they finally did. As far as regarding millennials and their aversion to it, I also seem to recall from a year or so ago a story on maybe 60 Minutes or something like that about how West Coast, in Portland or somewhere where the next thing is happening, unlike the last thing, which is here or last century's thing, young people who essentially were private contractors and worked independently are coming together to create offices, but they don't actually work together in the same company, but they want an office. So there's a general perception of both the social or kinship benefits, as this article says. It notes that a fairly high proportion of people actually meet their spouses at work in the office. So there's that sense of kinship and family. And then for me, there's also, I've imagined, the whole sort of texture of gossip, the court politics, the machinations, the information, a sort of group bulletin board, the bitching and complaining you're allowed to do. So there's a real texture of office life that if you're like me and your commute is 6 feet from your bedroom to your study, you imagine, that must be fascinating.
Well, especially for Rand, you're such an extrovert, I think, and so maybe it's a personality difference also that I also would define myself as an extrovert, and so I love. I mean, in the academic world, we have an office which I love to go to, and we also have meetings all the time, and some of my colleagues just can't stand meetings. Like, oh no, I hate meetings. Can't we just avoid it somehow? But I love meetings because I think it's really fun to go to meetings and sort of tackle some kind of problem and hear what everyone says about it and everything.
I hate meetings.
Yeah. Okay.
Hate them,
are you an extrovert or an introvert on the Myers-Briggs? It's hard to say about Josh.
I think
I'm an extrovert. Yeah.
But see, it's clear who doesn't like office
I don't
culture.
mind pontificating. I hate meetings.
It's clear to me who doesn't like office culture, or at least doesn't like the institution of office work. It's really ownership, right? Ownership doesn't want there to be offices. If they have a choice, I mean, obviously they relinquish a lot of control. But by and large, if they have a choice, it's really a lot easier to farm work out to people who aren't there. Then you don't have to keep a light on over their desk. You don't have to make sure that there's paper in the copy machine, or coffee in the coffee machine. Or I mean, they
don't waste time talking to each other.
Yeah, I mean, in some ways, there has become a huge temptation to farm that work out. And to me, I always feel like we celebrate a frontier when it's dying, or celebrate any institution.
Is that the
dying.
occasion for this piece? That there's the sense that it's sort of dissipating?
Yes.
Yeah.
So that Larkin, your daughter, or Cyrus, your son, they may not even, I mean, first of all, probably the piece suggests that culturally they will grow up looking down on offices and thinking that it's better to be an entrepreneur, better to drive your own ship, better to to be out there as a free agent or a sort of one human being job shop or something like that. And in any case, they may not be offered those kinds of jobs because nobody wants to give it to them. I don't know. Do you have a sense of your son, who's now in college, how he feels about things like that?
I actually don't know how he feels about offices per se. I mean, I think, he probably. I mean, it depends whether you're talking about just a situation in which you work together with other people. I mean, he certainly values that. So, but I think a lot, if I think about my students, the whole thing of you come into the room and everyone's just sitting on their phone. And I want to say, I always say to students, why aren't you talking to each other? You're just all on your phones. So in a way, the natural extension of that when they get out into the real world is to just be on their computer alone and in a cafe or at home.
Yeah, that's your office now. Your office is actually your handheld. That's your office.
Well, actually, and Rand, given your distrust of online culture, you'll be amused by this. There's actually, I heard about this week. There's actually a site, an app called Rain Cafe, and it offers you a couple of different options. One of them is, if you're a writer at home with a 6-foot commute to your desk, it'll make the noise of rain or some other kinds of ambient sounds for you. But it also will make the noise of a cafe. That you can adjust it, you can pitch it, you can mix it. You can actually create the sense that there are other human beings around.
Even the shows that make a laughingstock of office culture, like The Office, and even Mad Men, problematic as the depictions of office life are, it makes you want to be there. I mean, on the one hand, it's like, if they're going to be such laughable idiots in the office, at least I'll be entertained. And in the other one, it's like, wow, stylish, cool place with lots of intrigue. Who doesn't want that?
Well, I think Mad Men makes The Office look like the most insanely wonderful place to be.
Well, not only that, but I don't know. Are you up to date with Mad Men? I know you sort of watch.
I am up to date. Yeah.
Well, we know that when Don Draper is kicked out of the office, he's Mr. Maverick. He's Mr. Rugged Individualist.
He falls apart.
He completely falls apart. He tries to manipulate even what's going on at the office through office managers and secretaries who don't want to have anything to do with him. But it's clear that, yes, those are the Elysian fields.
He becomes a hapless and pathetic creature.
So it's horrible that, so much management is sort of dividing and conquering office culture by having sort of super evaluation where people are being compared to the person sitting next to them, and the other, you're going to get the worst person is going to get fired and all that. And all those practices serve to sort of go away from the delightful community that an office could be and should be.
Well, as Colin says, there's also so much less, and there's going to be less and less in the future, stability and continuity in the kinds of careers people have, and that changes everyone's sense of himself or herself, young people, as a worker.
When I got out of college and got my first job, I was really excited to have an office. I was so excited to have a place to be that, I was not only part of a team, but like a physical place where it was important for me to be there. And I mean, I still believe that. I'm sad that, that may be lost.
Yeah, I feel as though my identity and brain were shaped by the first place I went to work, which was actually the Hartford Courant. I was surrounded by very exciting, hyper-caffeinated people, a lot of whom are really smart. I didn't really have a very well-formed identity at the time. I'm not sure I do even now. But, I mean, I really was a very coming out of college, a pretty unformed person. And so much, I don't know how you would be now, a 23 or 24-year-old person who's told, well, just go to a coffee shop and invent an app and be an entrepreneur.
Terrible.
And I don't know how you would become yourself. I don't know I wouldn't know how to become myself in a vacuum like that. Conversation staller. All right. We have a call from, that's a gift I have as a host.
We're just imagining Colin if he hadn't gone to the
right.
Current. If he had just been alone
hung around
with his computer.
That would have been bad.
Oh, that
very
would've been
bad.
It would have been very bad.
Even without a computer.
I would basically be Gollum today. And I'm hovering on the brink of being that anyway. Here's Jessica from Woodbridge. Hi, Jessica.
Yeah, hi. Good afternoon. I'm calling because as an attorney, I found that after decades of office design promoting the open office floor plan and scheme, no matter what type of job function a person has really sort of forced people to work remotely just to have some peace of mind and be able to concentrate.
Well, here you touch an interesting. We have switched to an open floor plan here at WNPR. I happen to live a 3 or 4 minute drive away, and I kind of do that. I mean, today I was actually working at home for quite a while, and then I was thinking, no, I should be in the office because I need the little kind of creative boost, the energy boost, the reality testing that I get from all my coworkers. And I do think that you raise it's like a whole other conversation, which is that now the offices are set up in such a way as to invite you to occasionally leave them because nobody has an office anymore. Although,
yeah, I mean, I completely agree. It's unfortunate. I do work remotely most of the time, but when I do have to visit clients, I visit them at their place of business. I usually have an office there or a desk there. And so it is nice to sort of get that energy. But when real cerebral work is required, it's not just for lawyers. Of course, it's for many other people and other type of job functions. That type of open design is very detrimental.
So I'm going to let Rand have the last word on this one, too, because, that's obviously whenever you're working at home or working as a freelance writer or something, you do romanticize and glamorize the thing that you don't have. I mean, that's just human nature. We just do that. And there must be some part of you that knows, particularly because you are an extrovert, that in an office environment you would be really sort of tempted by the office politics and the gossip and there's sort of a lot of ways to to squander otherwise productive time in a place full of people.
Well, there are a lot of ways to squander it at home as well. And as you know, being online while you're working opens up endless fields of distraction. It's
the water cooler, the online water cooler conversation.
I just need to work any place that doesn't have a refrigerator. All right, so we're going to stop here, so we'll have time for endorsements. But when we do that, we'll stop. We'll come back after this.
Where I earn a tiny wage in my cubicle. Where I wrote this, what I'm saying in my cubicle. Where I hide out from my boss in my cubicle. Where I get lost in my thoughts in my cubicle. Where I earn a tiny wage in my cubicle. Where I wrote this, what I'm saying in my cubicle. Where I hide out from my boss in my cubicle. Where I get lost in my thoughts.
I don't think it matters whether you work in an office or a home. You can still be a good person, as long as you don't send out LinkedIn requests. Today's show was produced by Colin McEnroe and me, Kyone Wolf. Katie Pikus appeared in the intro, and Greg Hill tweets for us at WNPR Colin. Katie Tolarski is our executive producer, and Katie McAuliffe is our other intern. The part of Bill Curry was played by Katie Couric. For show pages, articles, and videos of the Faith Middleton Show staff swimming in their office grotto, visit our website, WNPR.org. On Monday's show, The Scramble will tackle some timely topics. And now, back to Colin.
That's our way of saying we have no idea what we're doing on The Scramble on Monday. We are saying goodbye to Katie Pikus. Our goal is to have as many people named Katie working here as possible, and possibly also change our names to Katie. But anyway, Katie Pikus, we'll be losing Katie today. She's going back. This is her second internship with us. All right, it's time for endorsements. We'll start with you, Irene. What are you going to endorse?
All right. Well, speaking of offices, I'm new to the wonderful cornucopia of having an Apple TV and having access to HBO Go. I've only had it for a couple of months, and so I discovered this show called Enlightened that's about an office, and it's Laura Dern and also Luke Wilson is in it, and it's really sort of an interesting, story about somebody who tries to do something to make an office better. It's only 2 seasons because they canceled it, and each episode's only half an hour, and it's just delightful.
I wouldn't call it delightful.
Well, it's.
How
I think
judgy.
it's got this internal critique that I think is interesting.
It's certainly you can get very addicted to it, very involved in it. But I mean, I think it raises a lot of interesting questions about people's relationship to work.
Yeah,
and about the whole idea of whether you can ever expect the place that you work for to love you the way you love it, or get it to be what you want it to be just because you believe in it. And the answer, I think, is no. But anyway.
Sort of.
Yeah.
No, sort of no.
I encourage catching up with the Enlightenment, too. I mean, I second your endorsement. Jacques, what have you got for us?
First, I'd like to do a quick and shameless plug for because it's related to the topic we were just talking about. We have B.J. Novak from The Office, who is also an author. He was Ryan the intern, since we're also talking about interns. On February 12th, we're going to be presenting him, the Mark Twain House is going to be presenting him at Aetna World Headquarters, appropriately in an office. So you can get information at marktwainhouse.org. I want to endorse something that I got my husband for Christmas. I got him the entire Mary Hartman on DVD.
Wow.
It's 38 DVDs, and we're parsing because it ran every weeknight. I forgot, and it's each episode's only 20 some odd minutes long. And when it was on the air, I was too young to appreciate what they were doing, but it is so funny.
Is it? It holds up.
Oh my goodness, it is so funny. Louise Lasser is unbelievably funny on that show.
And was that Mary Kay Place's breakout role? Was that when we?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh, might have been. She's the country singer, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. She's very funny.
I think it might have been. Wow. Well,
anyway,
get in
I don't
line.
know if it's on Hulu or Netflix or whatever, but it's 38 DVDs of wonderful.
We just have to wait until you're done, and then we'll all get in line to borrow it.
Okay.
Although the people at your office probably are going to borrow it first. Rand, what have you got for us?
Bunch of stuff, so I'll go quickly. Next Tuesday night at the Mark Twain House, Rob Dowling, who teaches at Central Connecticut, has written a biography of Eugene O'Neill, and he's
really good.
Going to give a talk and sign books, and he's really terrific. That's Tuesday night, 7 p.m. at the Twain House. A movie, I think it's still in town, best horror movie in years, called The Babadook.
I'm too scared to see the Babadook.
And if we had time, I think, Colin, you did it on the show already. I mean, maybe you can go back and listen. It's one of those horror movies. It's not about cheap thrills and jump cuts and cheesy editing, but it's based on human realities of grief and despair and madness. It's horrifying. 2 films that I at this time of year, I always go back and try to rent movies that I missed during the year. I would recommend sort of light comedy but touching a film called Chef, about a terrific chef in L.A. who has a blowout at work, loses his job, and becomes a food truck guy. And the other one is Begin Again with Keira Knightley and Mark Ruffalo. And Mark Ruffalo plays a completely broken down record executive who reconstitutes his career by discovering this great new talent. Again, these are both like light, touching, fun movies, but I enjoy them. Finally, if you are in Mystic or in that area looking for a place to eat, there is a terrific Lebanese restaurant called The Pita Spot. It's a really misnamed place because it makes it sound like a sandwich place, but it's actually a full-service Mediterranean grill, and they have the best baba ganoush I've ever had anywhere. The Pita Spot in Mystic.
So Baba Ganoush and Babadook in one.
Right. Have the Babadook ganoush.
In one endorsement. All right. I like almost everything that I've got is sort of shameless plugs, unfortunately. But very quickly, next Wednesday at Watkinson School, we are doing I think it's going to be a lot of fun. It's 7 o'clock. It's a panel on music and social change. We're going to have some really interesting performers. People will perform as well as discuss that. So Kaim, otherwise known as Self-Suffice, the rap poet, he'll be rapping. Lara Herskovich, who is a former state troubadour and more in the singer-songwriter/folk tradition, will be performing. They are collaborating outside my scrutiny on something that they will perform together. Neely Bruce, the composer and music scholar, will also be with us. So that's open to the public. You have to get tickets from Watkinson. Go to watkinson.org. That's probably your best bet. Then on the weekend, not this weekend, but the weekend after the Watkinson thing, the Festival of New Musical Plays at the Goodspeed. I think it's Friday, Saturday, Sunday, a different new musical every day. I'm going to be down there for that. I'm actually running a panel down there at one point. But it's kind of an interesting chance to see, musicals that may make it someday, may make it to Broadway, trying to have that the beginning shot, and often see some pretty good things down there. So it's a nice time of year to go down to the Goodspeed anyway, even though it doesn't seem like it would be. And very lastly, very quickly, if you could jump on Salon today and read the piece that I just wrote, urging Sarah Koenig to come to Hartford and do a serial on an unsolved Hartford murder from 2007. I would be grateful if you would take a look at that for me. All right, thanks to Irene, thanks to Rand, thanks to Jacques, and we'll be back on Monday.
Yeah, 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 yeah. On the radio. See you on the radio. On the radio, baby. You me talking, laughing down on Carolyn Acton Road.
Katie, what's wrong?
It's my last day, so I thought I'd try something crazy like taping an
Contemporary
air
art
under
with
Colin's
Mark
chair so it would go off when he sits down.
So, what's the problem?
He's using a standing desk.
We're really gonna miss you, Katie.